What if you could walk into your garden just once, plant a handful of vegetables, and then spend the next decade or two simply harvesting what comes back on its own? No seed trays every spring, no replanting the same beds season after season, no starting over. Just food, abundance, and a garden that keeps giving long after the work is done. Most people don't know this is even possible. They've been conditioned to think of vegetable gardening as a constant cycle of planting and replanting, and for annual crops, that's true, but there's a whole category of vegetables that operate on a completely different timeline. They behave less like seasonal crops and more like fruit trees. You put them in the ground once, establish them properly, and they come back stronger every single year, feeding you and your family with almost no repeated effort on your part. Today I'm walking you through 23 of those plants. Some of them you already know. Some of them are so underrated that experienced gardeners with decades of soil under their fingernails have never grown them. The ones toward the end of this list are genuine game changers. The kind of plants that make you wonder why nobody told you about them sooner. Stay with me all the way through because the further we go, the more surprising and valuable these get. I'm Liam, welcome back. If you love discovering practical ways to grow more food with less repeated effort, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. I put out videos like this every single week, and I never want you to miss one. Now let's get into it. 23 vegetables you plant once and eat from, practically forever. Number 1. Jerusalem artichoke, the underground abundance machine. Let's start with one of the most underrated vegetables in existence, and I mean that sincerely, because if more people understood what Jerusalem artichokes actually do in the ground, they'd be in every garden in the country. Above ground, this plant looks cheerful and familiar. Tall stems, bright yellow flowers that belong in a wildflower meadow. But the real story is underneath the soil. Jerusalem artichokes produce dense clusters of knobbly, nutty-flavored tubers with a taste that lands somewhere between potato and water chestnut. Earthy, slightly sweet, and genuinely satisfying, they're rich in inulin, a prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria, which makes them not just filling but actively good for your digestive health, in ways that regular potatoes simply aren't. Here's what makes them a true plant-once perennial. The root system multiplies on its own. You dig up what you need for the kitchen, leave a few tubers behind, and next season they come roaring back, more of them, larger clusters, stronger plants. You never replant. The garden does that work for you. Jerusalem artichokes are drought-resistant, pest-resistant, and genuinely indifferent to soil quality. They don't need rich beds or careful soil amendment. Give them sun and reasonable drainage, and they will handle everything else independently. In fact, once established, they can spread so vigorously that you may find yourself giving away surplus tubers to neighbors, which, in a garden context, is a very good problem to have. The one thing worth knowing is that they can become assertive spreaders if left entirely unchecked. Plant them where they have room to expand or use a buried barrier to define their territory. Within that boundary, they will feed you indefinitely. Plant Jerusalem artichokes beside mint or garlic chives. Both repel aphids and root maggots naturally, protecting the underground crop without any chemical input from you. That combination creates a self-managing little ecosystem that comes back every year stronger than the last. Number 2. Horseradish, the root that refuses to quit. If a plant could have a personality, horseradish would be the most stubborn, most loyal, most fiercely independent one in your entire garden, and in the best possible way. Once horseradish takes hold in your soil, it is essentially permanent. Even the smallest fragment of root left behind after harvest, a piece the size of your thumbnail, will regenerate into a full, vigorous plant. Frost doesn't stop it. Poor soil doesn't phase it. Neglect, which defeats most vegetables, seems to motivate horseradish, if anything. It is the definition of a plant that asks for almost nothing and gives back generously year after year. What it gives back is a sharp, fiery, intensely flavored root that has been used in cooking and natural medicine for centuries. Fresh horseradish is incomparable to anything in a jar. The heat is clean and bright, the flavor complex in a way that store-bought versions never quite match. It's rich in glucosinolates, compounds with documented antimicrobial and antioxidant properties, making it both a culinary ingredient and a genuinely functional food. The harvest system is simple and self-sustaining. Dig out what you need in late autumn or early spring when the roots are most potent. Always leave a portion of the root system intact. That's your seed stock for the following year, and it requires no effort from you beyond leaving it where it is. Plant horseradish near potatoes or carrots. It releases compounds from its roots that naturally repel Colorado potato beetles and carrot flies, two of the most persistent pest problems for root vegetable growers. One planting serves double duty for years, your condiment crop and your pest management system in the same spot. Number 3. Sweet potato vine, the triple-purpose perennial. Most people think of sweet potatoes as a root crop. Plant the slips, harvest the tubers, done for the year. But in warm climates with frost-free winters, sweet potatoes behave as genuine perennials, and the whole plant offers a level of utility that almost nothing else in the vegetable garden can match. The roots are the headline: starchy, naturally sweet, rich in beta-carotene, vitamin C, and potassium, one of the most nutritionally complete vegetables you can grow. But the leaves are equally edible and deeply underutilized in Western kitchens. Young sweet potato leaves have a mild, slightly sweet flavor when lightly cooked, closer to spinach than to the root itself, and they're packed with iron, calcium, and antioxidants. You can harvest leaves continuously throughout the growing season without sacrificing root production. The vines themselves act as a living mulch. They sprawl across the soil surface, shading the ground, suppressing weeds, retaining moisture, and reducing erosion. That spreading habit, which frustrates some gardeners, is actually the plant doing 3 jobs at once for free. In warm climates, leave a few small tubers or stem sections in the ground after harvest, and new plants will sprout when conditions return. In cooler areas, save the slips each season, and you're working from your own planting material indefinitely. No buying required after the first year. Grow sweet potato vines alongside beans or corn. The beans fix nitrogen that feeds the sweet potato roots. The corn provides vertical structure that contrasts beautifully with the sweet potato's horizontal spread. The combination keeps soil moist longer, reduces your watering burden, and creates a genuinely productive polyculture in a small space. Number 4. Asparagus, the 20-year investment that pays every spring. I want to be honest with you about asparagus because most garden content either glosses over the patience it requires or oversells the difficulty. The truth sits in the middle, and it's worth understanding clearly. The first year after planting asparagus crowns, you don't harvest at all. You let the ferns grow and push energy down into the root system. The second year, you take a few spears, just a few, to encourage the plant without exhausting it. By the third year, you harvest properly for the first time, cutting tender green spears every few days through spring, and from that point forward, a well-maintained asparagus bed produces reliably every single year for 15 to 20 years without replanting. Some beds have been documented producing for 30 years or more. That 3-year establishment period is not a long time when you consider what comes after it. A bed of 20 crowns planted this spring will be feeding your household through April and May of every year until your children are adults. No other vegetable offers that kind of return on a single planting. Asparagus spears are nutritionally exceptional, rich in folate, vitamin K, vitamin E, and the prebiotic inulin. They also contain asparagine, an amino acid that gives asparagus its distinctive flavor and its famously peculiar effect on your metabolism. They taste like spring itself, which is appropriate because they arrive precisely when your body craves fresh food most after winter. They need well-drained soil, full sun, and good air circulation. Once the crowns are established and the root system is deep, asparagus handles heat, drought, and benign neglect with ease. Add a generous layer of composted manure or seaweed around the crowns in early spring before the spears emerge. That single annual feeding keeps production strong and spears thick. Beyond that, asparagus largely manages itself. Number 5. Rhubarb. The tart perennial that produces for a decade. Rhubarb is one of those plants that earns its space in a permanent garden bed several times over before it's even close to done producing. The plant itself is visually dramatic. enormous architectural leaves on thick red or green stalks. The kind of presence that makes a kitchen garden look intentional and established. The stalks are what you harvest, tart and tangy, with a flavor profile that's genuinely unique. Nothing else tastes quite like rhubarb. They're used in pies, crumbles, jams, chutneys, and increasingly in savory applications where their acidity works like a culinary tool. They contain malic acid and oxalic acid, which contribute both the tartness and a naturally preserving quality that makes rhubarb jams particularly shelf-stable. One established crown, divided and replanted every 5 to 7 years to refresh vigor, will produce reliably for a decade or longer with almost no intervention beyond the division. The plant emerges every spring unprompted, pushing through soil that may still have frost in it, producing new stalks with a tenacity that genuinely impresses. You don't coax it, you don't baby it, you just harvest. The critical rule is to never harvest stalks in the first year and to always leave at least a third of the stalks on the plant during subsequent harvests. This keeps the root system energized and productive across the long term. Pull too hard too early and you weaken the crown. Harvest respectfully and it repays you for years. Plant rhubarb near garlic or chives. Both act as natural deterrents for the leaf-eating beetles that occasionally target rhubarb foliage. That pairing requires no chemical input and it regenerates itself every season, the garlic, the chives, and the rhubarb, all coming back together spring after spring like a permanent, low-maintenance food guild. Number 6. Tree collards. A living fence that feeds you for 20 years. Regular kale is an annual or biennial at best. Tree collards are something else entirely. A woody perennial brassica that grows like a shrub, reaches 6 to 10 feet tall, and produces large nutritious leaves continuously for up to 20 years from a single planting. That's not a typo. 20 years. From one cutting, properly established, you get 2 decades of fresh greens without replanting. The leaves are milder than standard kale, less bitter, more earthy, with a richness that improves when the plant experiences cool weather. They're high in calcium, iron, vitamin C, and vitamin K. You can eat them raw in salads, stir-fried, steamed, or blended into green drinks. The flavor holds up to heat better than most leafy greens. Tree collards don't grow from seed. You start them from cuttings which root easily in moist soil or a glass of water within 2 to 3 weeks. The cutting establishes, pushes out roots, and within its first growing season is already giving you harvestable leaves. From there, it just keeps growing, putting on height and girth, producing more prolifically as it matures. Pull outer leaves weekly and toss them in whatever you're cooking. The plant continuously regenerates from the center without pause. Once a year, cut back the woodier stems to keep the plant producing tender young growth rather than becoming a tall, stringy, hard-to-reach tree. Mulch around the base after the annual cut. That mulch retains moisture, moderates soil temperature, and slowly feeds the root system without you doing anything beyond laying it down. Plant tree collards near basil or marigolds. Basil confuses cabbage moths with its scent. Marigolds draw in the predatory insects that prey on the pests that target brassicas. Between them, you create a protective zone around your tree collards that strengthens every season. Number 7. Egyptian walking onion. The plant that plants itself. Everything about the Egyptian walking onion is slightly wonderful, and I say that as someone who has grown a lot of plants. It's quirky, it's productive, it's almost impossible to kill, and it propagates itself through a mechanism that you genuinely have to see to fully appreciate. Here's how it works. Instead of producing a single bulb at ground level like a conventional onion, the walking onion grows a cluster of small bulblets at the very top of its stem, elevated on the stalk, exposed to the air. As the season progresses, the weight of those bulblets pulls the stalk over. It bends, the bulblets touch the soil, and they root themselves, planting the next generation of the plant without any human involvement whatsoever. That's the walking. Over several seasons, an established colony slowly travels across your garden bed through this self-planting mechanism. Every part of the plant is edible. The underground bulbs have a strong, concentrated onion flavor that's excellent in cooked dishes. The hollow green tops are mild and useful as a scallion substitute. The small top-set bulblets are edible raw or pickled. You essentially get multiple onion products from one permanent planting. Egyptian walking onions are cold hardy to extreme temperatures, drought resistant, and disease resistant in a way that conventional onion crops simply aren't. They ask almost nothing. They produce reliably. They expand without your help. And they're so ornamentally interesting, with those top-heavy clusters of bulblets swaying on their stems, that even non-gardening visitors to your garden will stop and ask about them. Plant them near carrots or beets. The sulfur compounds they release through their roots naturally repel carrot root fly and beet leaf miner, two pests that can ruin an otherwise healthy root crop harvest. Number 8. Malabar spinach, the climbing, perennial green for hot summers. Regular spinach has a fundamental problem in warm climates. It bolts the moment temperatures rise, turning bitter and going to seed before you've had a proper harvest. Malabar spinach doesn't have that problem. It was built for heat. It thrives in the conditions that destroy conventional spinach, producing lush, glossy leaves prolifically through the hottest months of the year. It's a climber, which makes it as useful vertically as it is productively. Given a trellis, a fence, or any vertical structure, Malabar spinach will wind its way upward and cover it with deep green leaves and eventually small purple flowers that are genuinely beautiful. A single plant can cover a substantial area of fence in one growing season, and the more it grows, the more it gives you to harvest. The leaves are thick and slightly mucilaginous, a texture that functions beautifully in soups, stews, and stir-fries where it acts as a natural thickener. They're rich in iron, vitamin A, vitamin C, and calcium. In terms of nutritional density relative to growing effort, Malabar spinach is one of the most efficient plants you can have in a warm climate garden. In frost-free regions, it behaves as a true perennial, regrowing from established roots year after year. In areas with light frost, it self-seeds reliably. The purple berries that follow the flowers each contain a viable seed, and they drop into the soil and germinate the following spring without any intervention from you. Train Malabar spinach alongside beans or peppers. It provides afternoon shade that extends the productive life of heat-sensitive plants nearby. It also reduces soil moisture evaporation, which means less frequent watering for your entire vertical growing area. Number 9. Chayote. Hundreds of fruits from one vine, year after year. Chayote is one of those vegetables that rewards you so disproportionately relative to the effort of growing it that the first time you see a mature vine in full production, you genuinely can't believe one plant is responsible for all of it. A single chayote vine in a good growing season, on a structure large enough to support it, can produce hundreds of fruits. Hundreds. Each one is crisp, light green, mildly flavored, somewhere between a cucumber and an apple in texture, versatile in cooking applications from stir-fries to soups to raw preparations. They're low in calories, high in vitamin C, folate, and potassium, and they store well after harvest. What makes chayote qualify firmly for this list is what happens underground. The root system, which develops into a large, starchy tuber over several seasons, is perennial. It goes dormant in winter and sends up new vines in spring without any replanting. Each year the root grows larger, the vine grows more vigorous, and production increases. You're not starting over. You're building on what was already there. The entire plant is edible. Young shoots and leaves, harvested in spring before the vine really gets going, are tender and delicious sautéed with garlic and olive oil. The roots of mature plants can be eaten like a potato. The fruit is the main event, but nothing goes to waste. Grow chayote beside corn or sunflowers with established sturdy stalks. The vine needs something robust to climb. A small trellis won't contain a full-grown chayote vine, and tall companion plants provide both structure and productive vertical space simultaneously. Number 10. Okinawa spinach, the longevity green that looks like art. If you want a perennial green that earns its space on visual grounds alone as much as on productivity grounds, Okinawa spinach is genuinely something special. The leaves are two-toned, deep green on the upper surface and vivid purple underneath, making the plant striking enough to edge a formal garden bed or fill a decorative container while quietly producing edible leaves every day. It's from the Ryukyu Islands of Japan, specifically the region famous for having one of the highest concentrations of centenarians anywhere in the world. Okinawa spinach is a staple of the traditional Okinawan diet, and while no single food explains longevity, the nutritional profile of this plant is remarkable: high in antioxidants, rich in vitamins A and C, significant calcium and iron content, and containing anti-inflammatory compounds that have attracted genuine research interest. In warm, frost-free climates, it grows year-round as a perennial ground cover, spreading gently and filling space with edible, attractive foliage. It tolerates partial shade better than most productive garden plants, making it ideal for spots under taller companion plants or along the northern edge of beds. It needs moderate moisture and essentially no other management beyond occasional harvesting, which the plant actively benefits from. The flavor is mild, slightly tangy, and works well in the same applications as regular spinach: salads, stir-fries, soups, and smoothies. The purple pigment from the undersides comes from anthocyanins, the same antioxidant compounds found in blueberries. Plant Okinawa spinach near lemongrass or ginger. Both are aromatic pest deterrents with root structures that improve soil drainage and aeration, creating conditions that help Okinawa spinach establish faster and spread more confidently. Number 11. Moringa. The tree that outgrows everything and feeds everyone. We touched on moringa in the context of chicken feed in a previous video, but it deserves full discussion here as a vegetable crop in its own right, because what this tree offers as human food is extraordinary. Moringa is called the miracle tree in the countries where it's grown widely, and the name is earned. The leaves contain more protein per gram than most commercial protein powders, more vitamin A than carrots, more calcium than milk, more iron than spinach, and more vitamin C than oranges, all in a single leaf type from a single plant. Nutritional researchers have studied it seriously as a solution to food insecurity in warm climate regions precisely because it produces this nutritional density reliably even in poor soil and drought conditions that defeat conventional crops. The flavor is mild, somewhere between fresh spinach and green tea, with a slightly bitter note that disappears in cooking. Young leaves are the most tender and can be eaten raw in salads. Mature leaves are better lightly cooked. The long seed pods that appear on established trees are eaten like green beans when young, and the seeds themselves are edible roasted. Moringa grows fast enough to be genuinely surprising. A tree planted in spring in a warm climate can reach 10 to 15 feet by autumn. Cut it back hard and it pushes multiple new branches packed with fresh leaves. The pruning actually increases total leaf production rather than slowing the tree down. In frost-free climates, it's truly perennial and permanent. In cooler areas, it can be managed in large containers brought indoors in winter. Plant moringa near lemongrass or basil. Both repel the leaf-mining insects that occasionally target moringa foliage, and the aromatic combination creates a planting area that is as pleasant to spend time in as it is productive. Number 12. Sorrel. The lemon-flavored perennial that never takes a season off. Sorrel is the green that tastes like it was designed specifically for people who find regular salad greens boring. The flavor is distinctly, brightly sour, genuinely lemony without any actual citrus involved, and it arrives in early spring before almost anything else in the garden is producing. For a cook who's been working with stored and dried food through winter, that first spring harvest of fresh sorrel is a revelation. French sorrel and common sorrel are both true perennials, returning from established crowns every spring with no intervention required. The root systems deepen and strengthen over years, making the plants more productive and more drought tolerant as they age. You plant a crown or a small plant once, establish it in reasonably good soil with decent sun, and it comes back reliably for years, producing harvestable leaves from early spring right through to late autumn in temperate climates. The high oxalic acid content that gives sorrel its characteristic sourness means it's most often used in moderate quantities, as a flavoring component in soups and sauces, a zingy addition to salad when mixed with milder greens, or a base for the classic French sorrel soup, which is genuinely one of the most elegant things you can make from a kitchen garden. The acid content also makes sorrel a natural meat tenderizer when used in marinades. Red-veined sorrel is the most visually dramatic variety. Deep green leaves with vivid burgundy veins, and it works as an ornamental plant that also happens to be productive. For small gardens where every plant needs to earn its space on multiple levels, that combination is valuable. Pair sorrel with ginger or turmeric in adjacent beds. Their root systems improve soil structure in ways that benefit the sorrel's own root development, and both bring pest-deterring properties that protect neighboring leafy greens. Number 13. Perennial spinach, the tropical ground cover that feeds constantly. Also known as Suriname spinach or Brazilian spinach, this plant solves a problem that every warm climate gardener faces: finding a reliable leafy green that doesn't bolt or fail the moment summer heat arrives. Perennial spinach spreads across the ground as a low, dense carpet of crinkled, slightly succulent leaves that remain harvestable through heat and humidity that would destroy conventional spinach within days. It loves partial shade and warm conditions. It thrives in the kind of summer weather that clears most temperate vegetable gardens of all their productive leafy greens simultaneously. The texture of the leaves is thicker and more substantial than regular spinach, with a mild, neutral flavor that absorbs seasonings well. In stir-fries, it holds its structure under heat. In soups, it thickens the broth slightly as it cooks down. Raw, younger leaves have a clean freshness that works in salads alongside sharper flavored ingredients. Establish perennial spinach from cuttings rather than seed for the fastest establishment. A cutting taken from a mature plant roots within weeks and begins producing harvestable leaves quickly. Once the plant is settled into its position, it spreads steadily by stem layering. Stems that touch the soil put down roots and create new plants. Expanding the productive ground cover area gradually and continuously, grow perennial spinach beneath taller crops, beside ginger or turmeric, whose upright structure provides the partial shade that perennial spinach actively prefers. The combination uses vertical and horizontal space simultaneously, making your growing area more productive per square foot than growing either plant alone. Number 14. Taro, the ancient root crop that recycles itself. Seasonally, taro is one of the oldest cultivated food plants in human history, eaten across Africa, Asia, the Pacific Islands, and the Caribbean for thousands of years, and its longevity as a cultivated crop is not coincidental. It is extraordinarily productive, genuinely low maintenance in the right conditions, and self-perpetuating in a way that makes it one of the most efficient carbohydrate crops available to home growers in warm, humid climates. The corms, the thick, starchy underground structures that are taro's primary food product, are rich, creamy, and nutty, with a texture that becomes smooth and almost velvety when cooked properly. They're a complete source of complex carbohydrates, dietary fiber, potassium, and magnesium. Unlike many starchy root vegetables, taro has a relatively low glycemic impact, making it a more favorable carbohydrate source for people managing blood sugar. Above ground, the plant is architecturally beautiful. Enormous heart-shaped leaves, often 2 to 3 feet across, held on tall stems like natural umbrellas. They're edible when properly cooked. The leaves must be thoroughly cooked to neutralize the calcium oxalate crystals they contain, and they provide a productive green alongside the root harvest. Taro thrives in consistently moist or even wet conditions where most vegetables fail. Low-lying areas of your property that collect water, spots near downspouts, areas with heavy clay soil. Taro turns these liability zones into productive assets. After harvest, small side corms left in the ground regenerate new plants the following season without any replanting required. Plant taro near lemongrass or turmeric. Lemongrass repels the soil-dwelling organisms responsible for corm rot, and turmeric's rhizomes create natural drainage channels in heavy soil that improve taro's growing conditions. Number 15. Winged bean, the everything-is-edible protein vine. The winged bean is genuinely remarkable in a way that takes a moment to fully register. Every single part of this plant is edible. The 4 winged seed pods that give it its name, the leaves, the flowers, the stems, and the roots. All of them. Every growth stage, every plant part, all edible and all nutritious. This is not a common attribute in the vegetable kingdom, and it makes winged bean one of the most complete single-plant food sources available to tropical and subtropical growers. The pods are the headline harvest, crisp, bright green, with a flavor reminiscent of asparagus. And they contain approximately 20% protein by dry weight, which is extraordinarily high for a vegetable pod. The seeds inside mature pods approach 35 to 40% protein, comparable to soybeans. The root tubers that develop on established plants are high in both protein and starch. Even the flowers are edible, used in salads or as a garnish in Southeast Asian cuisine. Winged beans are vigorous tropical climbers that fix atmospheric nitrogen through root nodule bacteria, the same mechanism as other legumes, meaning they actively improve the soil they grow in rather than depleting it. Each season the planting area becomes more fertile, making subsequent crops in the same space more productive. That's the opposite of what happens with most heavy-feeding vegetable crops. In suitable tropical climates, winged beans behave as perennials, with the root system surviving between seasons and sending up new vines without replanting. In cooler, subtropical areas, they self-seed reliably. Either way, one initial planting tends to sustain itself. Grow winged beans beside corn or moringa. Both provide the vertical climbing structure the vine requires, and the nitrogen exchange between the legume roots and the surrounding soil benefits every plant in the area. Number 16. Cassava, the drought-proof staple that keeps itself going. There are plants that tolerate difficult growing conditions, and then there's cassava, which seems to actively prefer them. Poor soil, irregular rainfall, tropical heat, extended dry seasons. These are the conditions under which cassava not only survives but produces reliably, while conventional vegetable crops fail completely. In the parts of the world where food security is most precarious, cassava is often the crop standing between a community and genuine hunger. That's not accidental. The thick, starchy roots that cassava produces are one of the most calorie-efficient crops in existence, producing more edible calories per acre in difficult growing conditions than almost any other cultivated plant. They store exceptionally well in the ground, remaining viable for harvest over an extended period after maturity rather than requiring immediate harvest at a precise moment. In food security terms, that in-ground storage is invaluable. Cassava leaves are edible when thoroughly cooked. Essential preparation because raw cassava contains cyanogenic compounds that cooking neutralizes completely. Properly prepared, the leaves are rich in protein, vitamin A, and several B vitamins. The complete plant, roots and leaves, provides a genuinely comprehensive nutritional package from a single crop. Propagation is through stem cuttings rather than seed. Plant a cutting, water it through establishment, and within 8 to 12 months you have a harvestable root crop. Leave some root material in the ground after harvest, and new plants emerge the following season without replanting. In warm climates where the soil doesn't freeze, cassava maintains itself as a perennial system. Intercrop cassava with beans and maize. Beans fix the nitrogen that cassava's heavy root production depletes. Maize provides structural competition that keeps cassava growing upright and channels its energy productively. The combination produces more total food per unit of land than any single crop grown alone. Number 17. Arrowroot. The healing starch hidden in plain sight. Arrowroot looks at first glance like an unremarkable tropical foliage plant. Broad, lush green leaves on upright stems reaching 2 to 3 feet high. Nothing about its appearance hints at what it's actually doing underground, which is producing smooth white rhizomes containing one of the finest, most digestible starches known to food science. Arrowroot starch is gentler on the digestive system than almost any other thickening agent available. It's used medicinally to calm inflamed digestive tracts, to support recovery from gastric illness, and as a first food for infants precisely because it produces virtually no allergic reaction and is processed by the body with exceptional ease. For households with members managing digestive conditions, growing your own arrowroot is practically medicinal as well as culinary. The rhizomes spread and multiply underground with each passing season. Harvest what you need, typically in late autumn when the plant's aerial growth begins to die back. Process the roots into starch by grating, soaking, and drying, or eat them cooked as you would any root vegetable. Leave a portion of the rhizome network in place, and new plants emerge the following spring without any replanting. Arrowroot genuinely thrives in partial to full shade, a rare quality in a productive food plant and one that makes it invaluable for filling productive roles in the darker corners of a garden where most food crops won't perform. Moist, well-drained soil with consistent but not excessive water gives the best results. Plant arrowroot beside turmeric and ginger. The three share similar growing preferences and root structures, creating a mutually beneficial underground community that collectively maintains soil moisture, reduces compaction, and deters the soil fungi responsible for root rot. Number 18. Malabar nightshade, Ceylon spinach, the architectural edible climber. Also widely known as Bacilla alba or Indian spinach, this tropical climbing vine produces thick, glossy leaves on vigorous stems that wind upward with an elegance that earns the plant a place in ornamental gardens as readily as in vegetable plots. It grows with genuine ambition, reaching 10 feet or more on a suitable support structure, creating a productive living wall of deep green, edible foliage. The leaves are thick and slightly succulent in texture, with a mild, clean flavor and a subtle mucilaginous quality that makes them exceptional in soups and stews where they act as natural thickeners. The same culinary function as okra, which shares this property, they hold up to heat better than most leafy greens, making them one of the few vegetables that genuinely improves in a long simmered dish rather than disintegrating. Ceylon spinach is rich in iron, calcium, vitamin A, and antioxidants. In the heat of summer, when most leafy greens have given up, this plant is typically at its most productive. It was used historically in Ayurvedic medicine for its cooling properties and digestive benefits, and modern nutritional research has confirmed genuine anti-inflammatory activity in the leaf extracts. In frost-free climates, it grows year-round as a permanent, perennial vine. In areas with frost, it self-seeds reliably from the berries that follow flowering, ensuring continuous volunteer plants without any deliberate replanting. Give it a sturdy trellis or fence and plant heat-tolerant companions like peppers or eggplant at its base. The shade the vine provides from midday sun protects those crops from heat stress, while the vine itself draws maximum production from the warmest, sunniest conditions. Number 19. Perennial leek, the onion family member that never leaves most gardeners know leeks as a biennial. Plant in spring, harvest in autumn or the following spring, replant again. Perennial leeks operate on an entirely different schedule. Once established, they divide and multiply from the base, producing new daughter plants that cluster around the original, expanding the colony gradually and reliably without any replanting from you. The flavor of perennial leeks is milder and more nuanced than standard leeks. Less sharp, more subtly onion-forward, with a sweetness that develops particularly well in long, slow cooking. They're excellent braised, roasted, used as a soup base, or incorporated into any recipe calling for conventional leeks. The green tops are more assertively flavored and work well where a stronger allium note is wanted. Because they're perennial rather than biennial, you never lose the flavor base from your permanent beds. The colony that's been growing in your garden for 3 years has developed a root system and a flavor depth that newly planted leeks simply can't match. Older, established perennial leek colonies are one of the quiet glories of a mature kitchen garden. They're cold hardy to significant temperatures, tolerating ground frost without protective covering in most temperate climates. They appreciate good drainage and reasonably fertile soil, but don't demand constant amendment. Divide the clumps every 3 to 4 years to maintain vigor, replanting the divisions, which you can share, pot up for gifts, or expand your own colony with. Plant perennial leeks beside carrots, in a classic companion pairing that has been used in European kitchen gardens for centuries. Leeks repel carrot root fly, carrots repel leek moth. Both crops benefit from the presence of the other, and because both can be managed as semi-permanent plantings, the relationship persists season after season. Number 20. Globe artichoke. The stunning perennial that produces for 15 years globe artichokes occupy a special category of garden plant, productive, genuinely delicious and so dramatically beautiful that they function simultaneously as architectural ornamental plants. The silvery green, deeply divided leaves reach 4 to 5 feet across in a mature specimen. The flower buds, which are what you harvest and eat, are architectural marvels before they open, and if you let them go to flower, they produce enormous purple thistle blooms that attract pollinators from considerable distances. The edible portion is the fleshy base of each scale and the heart at the center. Rich, buttery, subtly nutty, and genuinely luxurious in a way that few vegetables match, artichokes contain cynarin, a compound that stimulates bile production and supports liver function, giving them documented digestive benefits alongside their culinary appeal. They're also one of the most antioxidant-dense vegetables commonly eaten. A globe artichoke plant, established from an offset or a pot-grown seedling, will begin producing in its second season and continue producing reliably for 15 years or more. As it ages, it throws up offsets, side shoots at the base, which can be detached and replanted to expand your planting or replace aging central crowns as they eventually decline. They need full sun, good drainage, and reasonably fertile soil. In cold climates, the crowns benefit from a protective mulch layer through winter. In mild climates, they need almost nothing beyond an annual feed of compost in early spring and a cutback of spent foliage in autumn. Plant globe artichokes where they can be permanent, at the back of a bed where their height won't shade smaller crops, or as a standalone feature, planting where the silver foliage and purple flowers can be fully appreciated. Number 21. Lemongrass, the aromatic perennial that earns its space 12 months a year. Lemongrass sits at an interesting intersection of culinary herb, productive vegetable, pest deterrent, and garden fragrance plant. It earns its spot in a permanent planting on all 4 grounds simultaneously, which is why it is featured repeatedly as a companion throughout this list, because it genuinely benefits everything around it while providing its own continuous harvest. The lower white portions of lemongrass stalks are the primary culinary harvest, aromatic, citrusy, and used as a foundational flavoring in Southeast Asian cooking in teas, in marinades, and increasingly in Western kitchens where the flavor has moved from exotic to mainstream. The oil content that gives lemongrass its distinctive scent is high in citral and limonene, compounds with documented antimicrobial, antifungal, and insect-deterring properties. That insect-deterring quality is not trivial in the garden. Lemongrass planted at strategic intervals throughout a productive growing area reduces aphid pressure, deters thrips, and repels the mosquitoes that make summer evenings in the garden unpleasant. It does this passively, simply by being there and releasing aromatic compounds into the surrounding air. No spraying, no intervention, no cost. Lemongrass grows as a dense clump of tall, arching stems. It expands steadily by producing new stalks from the base. Divide the clump every 2 years, replant the divisions, and you multiply your planting without buying anything. In warm climates, it's fully perennial. In cooler areas, it can be overwintered in a pot indoors. Harvest outer stalks at the base as needed throughout the year. The clump continues growing and never depletes from regular harvesting. In fact, harvesting regularly keeps the center of the clump open and productive rather than congested. Number 22. Turmeric, the underground gold mine that returns every year. Turmeric is having a cultural moment right now. It's in supplements, functional foods, health drinks, skincare products, and most of the people buying expensive turmeric products have no idea how straightforwardly it grows as a garden crop or how generously it rewards the minimal effort of planting it. Plant a rhizome piece with a visible growing point in warm, moist, well-drained soil in spring. Through the growing season, tall, elegant stems rise to 3 or 4 feet, bearing long, glossy leaves that are handsome in their own right. Underground, the rhizome multiplies. By autumn, when the aerial growth begins to die back, you have a substantial mass of golden-orange rhizomes to harvest, typically 6 to 10 times the mass of what you planted. The curcumin that gives turmeric its vivid color and its documented anti-inflammatory properties is present at far higher concentrations in fresh rhizomes than in dried powder. Cooking with fresh turmeric delivers a flavor that's earthier and more complex than the dried version. Floral, peppery, with an aromatic depth that dried spice doesn't fully capture. After harvest, save the smallest, most vigorous-looking rhizome pieces for replanting. They go back in the ground immediately or are stored in slightly damp sand until planting time. The cycle is self-sustaining after the first purchase. You never buy turmeric again. Plant turmeric beside ginger and arrowroot as a complete tropical rhizome trio. All three share growing preferences. All three benefit from the other's root activity in the soil. And all three can be harvested from the same well-maintained bed year after year indefinitely. Number 23. Ginger, the slow multiplier that becomes a permanent larder. We close this list with ginger because in many ways it exemplifies everything this video has been about. You plant it once, a single supermarket rhizome with green eyes showing will do to start, and it begins a self-perpetuating cycle that, if you manage it properly, means you never buy ginger again. Not next year, not the year after, not in a decade. Ginger grows slowly and with elegance. The upright stems, reaching 2 to 4 feet, are genuinely attractive plants, used in tropical landscaping as ornamentals in their own right. Beneath the surface, the rhizome extends and branches throughout the growing season, building mass steadily and quietly. By autumn, when the stems yellow and die back, there is a substantial harvest waiting underground. Fresh, aromatic, fiery ginger with a complexity of flavor that dried and powdered ginger cannot touch. Fresh ginger contains higher concentrations of gingerol, the primary bioactive compound responsible for ginger's anti-inflammatory and digestive properties, than any dried or processed product. The flavor is brighter, more floral, and significantly more complex. For cooking applications where ginger is a featured note rather than a background ingredient, fresh garden ginger transforms the dish. Harvest in autumn by lifting the entire root mass. Use the mature, firm outer portions for cooking and replant the young, light-colored inner rhizome pieces for next year's crop. Store replanting pieces in barely moist medium over winter in cool climates or leave them in the ground in warm ones. Either way, the cycle continues. Ginger grows most comfortably in partial shade and rich, consistently moist soil. It's an ideal understory plant beneath taller companions. Moringa, tree collards, or cassava can all provide the dappled light conditions that bring out the best in ginger, while the ginger's dense surface root network helps retain soil moisture for the benefit of its companions. That's 23 plants, Liam. Each one a long-term investment that compounds over time rather than demanding you restart from zero every season. The common thread running through every single one of them is the same principle. Work done once, yields earned repeatedly. That's not laziness. That's intelligent gardening. You don't need to plant all 23 this year. You don't need to transform your entire growing space before next spring. Start with the 2 or 3 that fit your climate, your cooking, and your available space right now. Establish them well, watch them settle in and begin their first season of return. Then add another. That's how a permanent, productive, low-effort food garden actually gets built. Not in a single ambitious weekend, but one well-chosen plant at a time, season by season, each one making the whole system more resilient and more abundant than it was before. Drop a comment and tell me which one you're starting with. I genuinely want to know. I read every single one. Hit the like button if this gave you real value, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.